Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan. It looks like Naughty Dog is struggling currently despite claiming that The Last of Us Part 2 was a rousing success and runaway hit. But in the year since the release of Part 2, we've gotten virtually no updates on The Last of Us Part 3. And the HBO show, as much as people claim that it was one of the best viewed and best reviewed shows of last year, those numbers are being entirely misrepresented. I have many videos up on this channel breaking down the numbers of The Last of Us television show, showing why it's nowhere near as impressive as people make it out to be, especially compared to what it should be. Now, I'm not a fan of The Last of Us TV show, but The Last of Us game, the one and only original game with the remaster, is one of my favorite games of all time. If this franchise were really as in good of shape as Naughty Dog claimed it would be, these layoffs would not be necessary. The news that I'm referring to when it comes to Naughty Dog struggling says Naughty Dog is reportedly laying off at least 25 developers, most of whom are quality assurance contractors. The Last of Us multiplayer spin-off is said to be basically on ice, although not completely canceled. This multiplayer was supposed to come out so very, very long ago. There's no way, in my opinion, that it will ever come out because The Last of Us Part 2 did not do as well as they claimed it did. If it were really a financial success, they would not be struggling like this. They would not need to fire people over this. And that just vindicates perspectives from many people in the sphere of YouTube that I belong to at Geeks and Gamers. A lot of people got in trouble about just briefly talking about the situation, getting false flagged, false copyright struck just by talking about The Last of Us 2 and saying that it was hot, steamy garbage. Naughty Dog was always, oh my god, it's so amazing, it's so amazing, it's so amazing, and ignoring the fact that it was dipping in sale. And that's what I want to talk about briefly here, that the sales numbers that I've broken down in previous videos when it comes to the Last of Us franchise and the opinions held by many people when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2 are being incredibly vindicated by this news here that Naughty Dog is having to fire people and virtually shut down a production of a spin-off game from The Last of Us. So The Last of Us as a franchise has sold 37 million copies. That is impressive. That is insanely impressive. And The Last of Us Part 2 is a contributing factor to that, but not the major contributing factor. We've got all these numbers here, which say 1.3 million copies were sold of the original Last of Us in its first week. That's pretty good for a no-name game. And of course, The Last of Us Part 2 came out to 4 million sales. That is a massive increase. Not going to deny that. The Last of Us 2 had very, very good initial success. But we recently found out in the first 2 years of The Last of Us Part 2's release, it got to 10 million units sold. 10 million. It barely doubled. It barely doubled since the initial sales it got in its first weekend. Now, something like The Last of Us 1 did far better than that. The Last of Us 1, which only got 1.3 million copies sold in its first week, got to 8 million copies sold in just over a year of its release. That is a runaway success. That is an impressive track record for The Last of Us 1. And before The Last of Us 2 even came out, the sales for The Last of Us 1 were all the way up to 18 million copies. Yes, those are numbers over the period of around 7 to 8 years. Still, it is incredibly impressive that something like that was possible for The Last of Us 1. So you'd imagine something very similar for The Last of Us 2, or just a good increase for The Last of Us 2. But it could only double in its first year. How many of these figures are Last of Us 1? So let's just do some basic math here. So when this article came out, it was roughly around the same time that we found out that The Last of Us Part 2 got 10 million copies sold. So 10 million, that's 27 million for the original, but we also know that only 18 million of those were for the original Last of Us. And so that is a good 10 to 11 million for the remastered edition. That might not be 100% accurate, but based on the numbers that we have, the remastered edition did as good as Part 2, if not better. That is not a good track record for a new entry into this franchise that is doing insanely well. 37 million copies is nothing to scoff at in less than 10 years. So this narrative that they're making that The Last of Us Part 2 was a runaway success, oh my god, everybody loves it, ignore the haters on YouTube, is completely shattered by these figures, by them having to fire people, by them having to lay off people by the dozen and cancel spin-off games. Naughty Dog is struggling as much as they claim to the contrary. I love to see Naughty Dog burn because they butchered one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. I can still go back and play The Last of Us 1 remaster, and that's all I need because The Last of Us Part 1 remake is terrible. It is completely horrendous. That's all I need, though, is the remastered edition. I don't need a god-awful television show. I don't need a horrendous sequel. I don't need a remake made by people who have no idea how to do a PC port. Naughty Dog is struggling, and they're finally starting to show the cracks that we all know have been there for many years now. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff that's dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.